Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Bennett. I am a New York City based brand strategist, and one of my favorite things in the world is to talk to founders building cool emerging brands. Lily Geiger is here today. She is the founder and CEO of Figlia, which is a gorgeous new non alcoholic beverage that I've personally tried. I'm seeing this brand pop up all over New York City. And Lily, I'm so thrilled to have you on the podcast.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. This is a very personal story to you and how and why you started your brand. For someone who is new, could you walk us through a little bit behind the scenes of your founder story and why you started your brand?
Yeah, of course. I started feeling it during the pandemic when everyone was drinking at an all-time high. I think that
Right.
a lot of new habits were forming at that time. And I essentially came from a background of growing up with an alcoholic parent my whole life. My dad was an alcoholic. He battled with alcoholism for as long as I can remember. And when I was 20 years old, I lost into the disease. So I was hyper aware of the options that were not available to the non-drinker when he was in recovery, especially at a bar or restaurant when, you want to be social, you want to feel like you're a part of the group, and you go to get a drink. It's either sparkling water or soft drinks or juice. And the only non-alcoholic option I feel like at the time was maybe a non-alcoholic beer, but that can be super triggering to somebody in recovery to actually like taste alcohol. So I wanted to come up with something that did not mimic the taste of alcohol, but still tasted sophisticated and looked sophisticated. So that meant that you were proud to have it on your bar cart. You were proud to bring it to a party, proud to have it in a glass at a bar or a restaurant. And that's how Figlia really came to be.
Well, first, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad. I also lost my dad. So just that alone is
Yeah.
a huge milestone in someone's life. And for you to take that pain and experience and turn it into a purpose and a product and a mission, it's just an incredible thing to hear. So that was something that really touched me when I was learning about you and your story. What has been something that differentiated you in the non-alcoholic space? Because this, I think the pandemic opened a lot of people's eyes of maybe not realizing they didn't have the best relationship with alcohol, or they developed a unhealthy relationship with alcohol, or they just became more curious on how to just like clean up their health and their lifestyle. The pandemic was that timeout that I think in a odd way we kind of all needed to check in with ourselves.
Totally.
um what has been some things that you're like, okay, I still see this gap in this space? I would love to hear more about how you've differentiated yourself.
Yeah, so I found that a lot of the options on the market, I didn't really like the way that any of them tasted enough to have them every night. I enjoyed some
Got
of
it.
them, but they didn't really hit the mark on something I would be comfortable ingesting every night, whether it was taste or just the ingredients. A lot of them have preservatives or a ton of adaptogens to the point where I like read the label and I'm like, I don't even know what half the stuff on this is on the label. Like I just cannot identify even like, a majority of the ingredients. And on top of that, I just didn't like the mock gin, the mock like tequila, like the non-alcoholic versions of these spirits. I just don't really want, if I don't want to drink, I'm not going to drink that type of product, even though I think that they've done well and I think they're great. It's not for me. And I definitely don't think it's most likely for someone in recovery who's actively trying to not drink. And I think that could be very
Right.
triggering. And so I wanted something that really tasted great, that looked great branding wise, that could be taken seriously, and something that people were proud of, that also didn't have these ingredients that I didn't want in my, to ingest every single evening. And I also just found that a lot of them were not talking about alcohol consumption. Nobody wanted to talk about the negative effects of alcohol consumption. And I've found recently, especially, I talked to a lot of founders and a lot of people in the space, and they're like, oh, I've also dealt with that, but I don't want to share that, which is fine. It's teach their own, of course. And it's a really
Right.
hard thing to talk about. Like, I really feel like I started talking about it when I started this because it's a really, really hard thing to discuss with people. And I think that there's a lot of shame and a lot of stigma around that. And so what I am trying to do with Figlia and what we really champion is my story. And in telling that, hopefully making a lot more people feeling comfortable in telling theirs and trying to just peel away the stigma that is so bound to this disease. And I think that I don't really see anybody else doing that. And so if we're the only ones doing that, then that's fine. We'll be that brand. But I certainly see often that a lot of brands try to shy away from that. And so I definitely don't want to be that. I want to always really continue to address it and provide resources to our community. We give a percentage of our proceeds to Partnership to End Addiction and work very closely with them. How can I speak about addiction and removing the stigma on our platform? How can I be helpful to them even? And so yeah, that's really something that I think really sets us apart from our peers.
Absolutely, and I noticed that too. That was something that struck me from the beginning of, your brand coming on my radar. I was like, "Wow, she is much more outspoken about the disease part versus, like, if you're curious or if you just wanna try it," which, every brand has its own niche and messaging, but I do agree that I hadn't really seen that discourse as direct as yours, and just on a personal level, has it been almost cathartic being able to share your story and share a little bit more of like something that, truly impacted your life? Has it been healing in a way to be able to talk about it and put it out there in this way?
Yeah, I totally. I think that for someone like me who it took a while to be able to talk about it, I think it's super therapeutic and to just feel that I'm not alone in this because I know
Right.
it's almost in every home. This is not like uncommon. It's just that
Right.
people don't want to talk about it. And that's really the nature of even like AA is like you're in a basement of a church and if you see that person on the street, you can't say hi because you know it's all filled with shame and it's just all suppressing. And I think that for me, growing up with my dad and having a single parent, especially, you want to protect them. You want to protect their credibility and for people to
Right.
know that they're not a bad person because that doesn't make them a bad person, right? That
Right.
doesn't even make them half the things that people think come with addiction. And so I totally respect why people that whose parents are still here have a hard time talking about it. I have other family members that I don't feel comfortable talking about because they're still alive.
Right.
Um, but this is my story to tell with my dad. And I think I had a hard time talking about that before because I was like, well, he was the one battling with the addiction. I was like, but I was living through this with him and
Right.
got all the, things that came with it. And if anything, it like totally was destroying my life, to be honest. And so even though losing my dad was really, really hard, I think it brought a lot of perspective on where my life was at then and where it is at now, so I can help other people that may be in my position or even his position. So
Lily, that's really beautiful. It is. It is. And I just respect the hell out of you for
thank you.
doing what you're doing. What has been your strategy to make this a reality, right? Because you have this idea, you have this passion. I can feel the passion like radiating off of you, which I love when I come across that from a founder. How did you create your unique formulation in the sense of like, was it in your kitchen or you worked with a food scientist? And I would just love to hear a little bit of that overview of you had this idea and now I'm able to shop it at like these really cute grocery specialty stores in New York City. Like, how'd that happen?
It's so weird.
Walk
It's
us
still
through
so
it.
weird. Yeah, I still get excited when someone's like, "Oh, I saw you at my local store." I'm like, "What? Really?" I'm like so still excited by the whole thing and always stunned. But yeah, I didn't know anything about the beverage industry. I guess I'll start off with that. I never worked in beverage. I had never learned anything about it. I knew nothing. And it was the pandemic. So I had no sounding board. I had no one to guide me through this process. I just had this idea. And I Googled a lot of, co-packers, formulators, but again, it's COVID, so I can't really go meet any of these people. So
Right.
I found a branding agency that I really resonated with. And I basically pitched them an idea of just what I kind of saw in my head for this brand. And they came up, helped me create this whole brand identity. But on the formulation side, I found a formulator in Los Angeles. I used to live in LA and met with them, or they would mail me the samples. And then finally we were able to meet at the closer to the end of that period and came up with this formulation and this product. But it was a really just crazy process because I didn't know anything. And so it was a lot of me just figuring it
Figuring
out.
it out.
And now it's completely different. Now we work with a different formulator. We have a different co-packer. Like we've been able to really like fine tune all of the inner workings of this business. But at the beginning, I see like look back on that and I'm like, what the hell was I doing? Like I have no idea how I even got to this place. It was just yeah, I tried my best.
And it sounds like you are a very driven person that if you have an idea or you have a vision of something, you will find the right next step to make it happen. It just sounds like
Totally.
that's also part of who you are, just hearing a bit of your story. And I think that alone is such an incredible trait to have as a founder, where so many people can, and it still happens. You could get lost in your own sauce in the sense of like overthinking or, waiting too long or something like that. But sometimes when you go in not knowing anything, it actually is an advantage because you're open to figuring it out and you have to figure it out, and it's kinda like you have to get out of your own way and ask for help and talk to different people in order to figure that out. So it actually is a really great way of going about a business too, because you're open to learning and you're curious. You're not
Totally.
judging yourself in the way in, you know what I mean?
Oh, no, I mean, I just was like, it's going to have to happen somehow, right? And I'm just
Yeah.
going to keep taking, one step after the next and just see how far I can get with this idea. And then I'll see if it works. And if it doesn't, then I'll just have to move on and try something else.
So how did you had the initial product, you worked with this branding agency. How did you start getting it onto shelves? Cuz I think a lot of people listening to this that they're kind of in that cusp of like, okay, I have this great product, I feel confident about it. I got the branding, I have an idea of how I want to be talking about it, differentiating, but I need it on the shelves. How did you go about that?
So it's interesting because we launched in at the end of April of 2021. So the pandemic was still very relevant. We didn't launch in a lot of stores. We didn't launch in any stores on launch day. We launched only online. We had a
Okay.
great launch day online. I don't know how. I am not famous. No one that I'm friends with is famous. It was like I thought it was gonna be like my mom and like the my friend that I work with's mom. So we basically, launched online, had a few retailers reach out to us, but we really didn't know how to get into wholesale yet. Like I had no idea how that even worked. Luckily, my friend who works with me works in wholesale or had some wholesale experience, and we had a few people reach out. We're like, all right, let's try it. Let's just go into a few low-hanging fruit type stores, like non-alcoholic bottle shops. We know they understand the product. We don't really have to do much.
Right.
And then we kind of started thinking like, okay, we can get into a bunch of restaurants and stores too. Like let's actually reach out ourselves. So it was a mix of people reaching out to us and finding us and us sending out about 100 emails at night after the workday. Like, can I come sample in New York? Or, she's based in Miami. Can I go sample Miami? Or can I, if I'm in another city, can I come, by? Or I would drive up to the Catskills. I would drive to, Blue Hill Farm up in Westchester. I was just like, let's just see how many places we can get into. Um, and we did it. And now we're in over 525 locations across the US. And that includes like Alaska
Wow.
and places I was like, I did not even know we could find a place that would want to sell us out there. Um, and Hawaii. I think, yeah, it's crazy. A few select places in Canada. And yeah, now we're looking at some larger retailers, but it literally just took, I bootstrapped the business up until this past June. So it was just, we were scrappy and we would just reach out to everyone we could. And we had like an email that we knew was like our template. We would plug in the restaurant's name or the store's name and address someone if we knew their name. If not, we would just say hi there. And then we would just say like, we'll send you a sample. And if we can, if we're in person, I'll come by and I'll meet you and we'll do a tasting. And so all of our New York
Incredible.
people I've met, every New York restaurant owner, bar owner I've met myself.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I love this so much because I think that just speaks to being innovative, being thoughtful, having great branding, packaging, messaging, and then also like, hey, hi, I will come to your restaurant. I will come to your bar. I will come to your grocery store and I will sample. And here you go. And just
Yeah.
getting the word out there.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is a great piece of advice for a founder who's maybe again on that cusp of getting ready to do that outreach because it could feel scary and you're like, I don't know, I feel awkward. Was there anything that you just kept reminding yourself or telling yourself of like, just hit the damn send button? We got to go. We got to put it out there.
I think I care about this space so much. I care about
Yeah,
this product and this brand and my story. And I think that's the only reason why I'm able to do it because CPG is a beast, but like beverage
right.
specifically is such an oversaturated market. And even though this non-alc space seems like new and exciting and it's buzzy, which it is, but like there are so many new products popping up every other day. And it's like, how do you stay relevant? And we don't even have multiple flavors. We only have one flavor and we have a bottle and a can. And we've made it this far. We want to have other flavors, of course, but I think it's really it's a hustle, it's a grind. And I don't even know how some days I get through it. I'm like, this is just so hard for someone who's never been in beverage before. It's a
Right.
lot to learning curve, especially with distributors and retailers and learning the inner workings of that as well as
Absolutely. But it sounds again like you're curious and you're figuring it out,
yeah.
which is the best foundation to grow from. What is the vision of the brand? Like where would you love to take it? What is that north star that you have your eye on to take it to that next level in maybe 5, 10 years, 20 years from now?
I mean, I'd love for Figlia to be everywhere. I would love for us to be, outside of the US at some point. I would just love to see it in more locations, like just more bars, more restaurants where people can just have the option and just for more people to, feel like they can count on us to be that option for them is important to me. And that's really it. I mean, outside of that, I want us to, be successful just in the sense of like bringing people pleasure and yeah, and
And you are.
making them happy. Yeah.
I love it. What is a piece of advice to that Lily, say 2 years ago, who had an idea, who maybe started reaching out to co-packers, maybe a branding agency, and just was like, I have this idea. I need your help. I'm figuring it out. What piece of advice would you share with that founder?
I I always say just to like always shoot your shot, especially when it like you can't really be too shy when you're doing this. You got to reach out to people blindly all the time. So that I would also say I wish I knew a little bit more going into it about fundraising and the financial side of things and the inner workings of the beverage industry. I wish I knew a little bit more. So I would have maybe read up on that a little bit more before getting into this. I think it's super important. And it's some of the things, some of the mistakes you make and decisions you make that you can't go back on. It's totally fine. It's normal. And to not beat yourself up on it. And somebody told me this and I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was my therapist or something, but we had spent, a ton of money and we ended up not using, what we spent the money on. And she was just like, education is expensive.
Right.
And and that's just the way it goes sometimes. And you have to chalk it up to that. Like you learned a huge lesson. It cost you, but you learned and you'll never do that again but yeah, you got to be comfortable making mistakes in this industry because it's gonna happen no matter what. But I would say just yeah, have grace with yourself. But also I wish I knew a little bit more about the financial side of things.
Is there a resource or a platform that you would recommend learning more about the financial side for, say, fundraising or beverage?
I mean, honestly, I'm a huge fan of podcasts. Like I've listened to, I don't know if it's Y Combinator's podcast or if it was on Y Combinator, but that's been really helpful. Or just like
Y Combinator?
yeah, that's like the template for like a safe note. They create the template. And I think just listening to other founders speak on podcasts is super helpful and just hearing about their experiences, like Startup CPG has a great one
Yep.
in this industry specifically, obviously. Um, Otherwise, I mean, I feel like I've learned mostly through opening myself up to, I guess, getting more insight from other founders or peers. Like I have another friend who started a company and she knows her stuff. I mean, she really knows it. And so just picking her brain and not letting my pride get in the way of that. Like I'm just like, teach me everything you know. Like I clearly have no idea, please help me in any way. I'm not too proud to take any advice. So yeah, I guess just like removing your ego from that process too. It's like you don't know what you don't know. And
Right.
yeah.
That's a solid, solid piece of advice that I wish I had heard sooner. So I'm really glad that you said that because I'm sure many people right now are like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, I could do that. Like that, I could wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And my most important question: where can we shop your incredible beverage?
So you can actually go to our website and you can buy it on the website if you'd like, and get it delivered to your door. But you can also plug in your zip code in the tab that says Find Us, and you can find us at any of the stores or restaurants that are near you if you plug in your zip.
Awesome. And I'll put the website and social in the show notes. And just Lily, thank you again for sharing the story behind Figlia. This was an incredible conversation that I know will impact so many people on so many different levels, and how you're using your personal story to make an impact. It's just really cool.
Thank you so much. And thank you for
You're so
having me. That's
welcome. You're
great.
so welcome. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.